Alright, I saw somebody in the Papa Gut Discord send this video. It looked kind of interesting. My parents are brother and sister, so this woman that we're seeing here was the product of incest, so this is probably going to be a heavier story, probably going to be very messed up, but, I was interested to hear about it, so let's hear about it.
I felt that no one would want to know me. I felt sick.
She's from the UK. That makes sense. There's a lot of degeneracy in the UK. Sorry. Probably a little bit inappropriate given the contents of this video, so I'll try to keep the jokes light.
I felt revulsion. The office contacted me to see if I still wanted to go ahead and meet my mother, which I did. I wanted to very much find out what had happened, why. Had she been assaulted? Was it consensual?
Jesus Christ, yeah. I mean, like I said, this is, heavier topic for sure.
Made a very big decision that changed the whole course of my life. Hi, I'm Teresa Weiler, and in my early 20s I discovered that my biological parents were brother and sister. When I was born in West London, my mum left very quickly and I was taken into the care of what was then called London County Council and moved to a children's home, not like they are today, a very big one which had its own school, nursery, hospital, everything.
I mean, that depends, because, like, I feel like that's not too uncommon in the US. I could be wrong, but she does live in the UK, so maybe, like, they don't do it as much in the UK. To my knowledge, but that's fucking crazy that she, like, later discovered in her life that, like, her mother was sexually assaulted by the brother. You know, I made a light-hearted joke earlier about, like, people being degenerate in the UK, but there's a level of truth to that. I mean, you have, like, Russell Brand, who was, like, in his 40s, and he slept with a 16-year-old, and then he used the excuse, well, it's legal. That was his excuse. Like, okay. Just because the age of consent is 16 in the UK doesn't mean, like, I don't know, you're still a fucking weirdo. Like, you're still sleeping with someone who is not legally an adult yet while you are in your 40s. That's a little bit, like, I feel like that's side-eye worthy, but I don't know, dude.
Children's worker decided she would try and place me for adoption. And at 2.5, she placed an advertisement in the Tablet, which is a Catholic weekly newspaper, asking for a home for a...
Is religion going to be tied into this? That would also make sense. The Bible has all kinds of really gross things that people use to justify. They use a lot of common uses of it is using it to justify hatred of groups of people. But another use you'll see of the Bible is, like, there's no age of consent. And, like, that's unfortunately very common. Whereas with, you know, like, with slavery as well, that's another thing people use the Bible to justify for us, too.
2.5-year-old girl. She said of above average intelligence and very bright. My parents were looking at the time and answered the advertisement. And I started to visit with them in West London. And eventually, at the age of 2.5, I was adopted by them. They already had 2 boys who were 2 and 4 years older than me, that were their children. And they subsequently adopted another little girl behind me, making us a family of 4 growing up. So I had a very happy childhood, some might say privileged. My dad was a very senior civil servant. In fact, he was the man that orchestrated the Cenotaph Remembrance Service for 20 years. So I had
Oh, that's interesting.
Nice childhood growing up, played lots of sport, played lots of music, and went to a very nice school. As we all grew up, my brother's slightly older than me, they were beginning to settle down, get married, and children started to arrive, so grandchildren for my parents. And up until then, I hadn't really taken much notice of babies or of, you know, the fact that nobody knew anything about me as a baby. But
it's interesting because when you're a young child, like, getting adopted at 2.5 years old, you don't really think that much of it. You just think, oh, I have a new family, and that's that. And then you grow up with them, and that's kind of like, it is what it is. But I don't know, to discover the reason you were adopted was because your parents were siblings is gotta be horrifying. It's almost like one of the rare instances where there is a world where, like, ignorance is bliss. And, like, if she, like, had she just, like, lived her entire life and never found out that her parents were siblings, like, ideally, she could have lived, like, a normal life and would have been okay. But, like, I don't know. It's almost like, was the additional information really worth the extra trauma in your life? Did you need to know? Like, I don't know. I think it is, like, a legitimate conversation to have of, like, how much, like, sometimes ignorance being a blessing. And it's very complex. I don't think it's so black and white. I'm very open to interpretation from anyone's opinions on that. Me personally, I mean, I guess if you really think it'll give you the closure that you need in your life, sure, you can have the knowledge of it. But I also would be curious to know how she would have felt if she never found out at all, because it probably would have just been like a normal life. I don't know. I feel like the conversation is interesting to have, at the very least.
When the first child was born, my nephew, I felt this overwhelming urge that, yes, actually, I wanted to do exactly the same. I wanted to get married, settle down, and very much have children. So that got me thinking about my genetics and, well, you know, what was my background, because basically I didn't really exist until I was 2.5 when the first photos and that sort of thing were taken. So without telling anybody, because I didn't want to upset my parents or appear to look as though there was anything wrong with my upbringing, I contacted the local social services to find out how I went about finding out more. They discovered that my records were held in Islington in North London, and they arranged for me to go along and view them. So again, in secret, I didn't tell anybody for fear of upsetting people. I went to the Islington office in North London, and the receptionist
So it's an example of curiosity kills the cat, I reckon.
showed me to a little room and said they would bring in my records. I wasn't allowed to photocopy anything or take anything away, but I could write notes if I wanted to. Shortly afterwards, she brought me a file and she just plopped it on the table and left me to it. I opened it up, and the first thing I saw that my mum was unmarried and 16 and had been unable to care for me alone, and that was why she had left me and put me in the care of social services.
Yeah, so she probably did it without getting the abortion, yeah. And obviously she wasn't planning on having a child because it was a sexual assault, so...
And as I carried on reading down, I saw the details of the father. And to my shock, I discovered that my father was actually her brother.
Yeah, crazy.
And he was only 14 at the time. So basically my parents were brother and sister. You can imagine, I've grown up in a nice Catholic family where sex before marriage is even frowned upon. This was something off the scale, and I really did not know what to do with that information. I felt sick. I felt revulsion. I felt it answered a lot of questions why nobody had wanted me, and that would be why I went into a children's home. But most of all, I felt shame, because this was a taboo in not just in the Catholic.
See, this is what I'm gonna circle back to the conversation we just had about, like, ignorance being bliss. Like, finding out that your parents are siblings, like, that level of shame, like, that shame runs deep because of the fact that you technically weren't supposed to be born. Like, you were born on accident, and that's got to be extremely demoralizing and disheartening. Like, quite so. And I feel like that would add to your mental health issues more. So I legitimately... But, like, I don't know, man. Like, obviously, like, she was curious to find out who her parents were, and I think that's, like, fine to have that curiosity. But I'm honestly very split. Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, what I would have preferred, like, not knowing about it or, like, finding out the truth about it. And honestly, like, I'm very split on it. Like, I can see arguments for both of it. How much does knowing about it really add to your life? You know what I mean? Like, will it make your life better or worse knowing about it? Like, do you need to know about it? Is it, like, a necessary thing to know? I don't know, man. Like, I legitimately think that there is, like, a conversation to have there. I would be curious to hear what you guys think, honestly, because I'm actually very split on this topic. I really cannot decide.
Community, but in any community, that would be something that people would be appalled by, as I was. So the lady came
I mean, anyone would be appalled by finding out that information, understandably so.
back. She took the paperwork off me. She didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. I've no idea to this day if they knew what was inside. I'm sure nowadays you would have counselling before such a discovery, but nothing like that.
It's crazy how this shit has gotten more acceptable as of recent times. Like, even back then, people could recognize, like, wow, holy shit, this is bad. But then nowadays, people who are right-wing grifters go out of their way to defend such behavior.
So I left the office and for quite a long time just walked about, trying to process what I had just read and feeling incredibly full of shame. I felt that no one would want to know me. They would look at me with the same revulsion that I'd just looked at what I'd read. And I decided...
I guess on the bright side, you have the, I guess, is it right to say cover story? I don't know. You have, like, your adopted family that you can just be like, oh, hey, yeah, I just live with them. And you never have to share that information with anyone else if you really don't want to. But then again, like, she's old now, or a lot elderly now, so I guess she feels more comfortable sharing it to the general public here with us right now.
I did there and then that I could never tell anybody. This was something I would have to keep secret and no one could ever know, because if they did, they wouldn't want to keep me. And as I carried on walking, and over the next few days, I made a very big decision that changed the whole course of my life. In blind ignorance, because nobody knew anything in those days, as I say, it was very taboo, so I'd never heard of anybody in that situation. I thought that if I married and had children, there was a very high possibility I could pass on some developmental delay, either physically or mentally, and that wasn't something I could wish upon my own child. And so...
maybe, I guess, like, you could get, like, a doctor's opinion on it, but this would have been, like, decades ago, right? Like, obviously, this is gonna be gross, but, like, unfortunately, incest was a lot more common in, like, medieval times. Very, very nasty, not so fun fact for those of you watching and listening, but it happened a lot more. And even in, like, ancient Egypt, it was very common. People, I guess, still managed to live through and survive meaningfully during those times, so I guess if they could survive them, obviously she's, like, elderly now, and so she survives, but, like, if she's worried about her having her child having, like, some form of cognitive developmental thing, so, yeah, wow. It's just really, like, that's just so fucked up, man.
Decided there and then that I would not have children. I would not follow the path that I thought my life would take, settle down, get married, have children just like my siblings. But indeed, I would have to think that through again. And so my life did not pan out how I thought it would. So as they were all having their children, I decided that the best thing I could do was to be the best auntie ever. I built a very strong relationship with all my nieces and nephews, and they brought me enormous joy, and still to this day do. While I was making...
That's nice, at least. I think that's, like, I guess, a good silver lining from this story. You gotta get every silver lining that you can get.
...inquiries at the social services office.
Thankfully that there isn't any religious trauma. I thought, like, religion was gonna be, like, a huge role in it as well, when she brought up Catholicism.
They discovered that there was a register, And this register was for parents who were looking for their children or children who were looking for their parents. And you were able to put your name on it and then wait and see if a match came up. It was some months later, but a match did come up, and the office contacted me to see if I still wanted to go ahead and meet my mother, which I did. I wanted to very much find out what had happened, why. Had she been assaulted? Was it consensual? You know.
I don't know, man. It sounds like an assault. The idea of having sex with a sibling just sounds really fucking nasty, unless you live in like a, I don't know, man. I'm trying to think of a situation, unless the family was like that batshit fucking crazy, where it was like willing. I don't even know if I could say it was consensual, because like at those ages they can't really consent to each other, right? Especially to, I don't know, man. It's so weird. Like I don't really like the quote unquote nuanced conversation about incest, because it is just inherently disgusting.
What had happened? What had led to that? And why had she then left me? And so the arrangement was that I was given an address to go to. And again, as always, in secret, I went to that address and knocked on the door. A lady answered it. She wasn't that welcoming. And I hadn't realised until that point quite how everything was burning up inside me with all the questions I'd got. But what most struck me, and people who are not adopted would probably never consider this, was that for the first time in my life, I saw somebody that looked like me and that I looked like. And that's a really big thing if you've never had it all your life. So she showed.
I would imagine so. I mean, like, some people say that I look like my older brother all the time. I don't see it personally. Maybe it's just because I've lived with him all my life. But it would be a massive big deal for somebody who was adopted, I could imagine. But I don't know if I could, I mean, I don't know what that feels like, truthfully, because I've never been adopted. Not to my knowledge. Haha.
Me into the flat.
Sorry, that's not really that funny, but still.
And there was a gentleman sitting in the corner who she introduced as a friend. But again, this absolute likeness and resemblance struck me about him.
I think if there's one thing that this proves, is that it's pretty clear that they were scared to tell her the truth, which some could argue demonstrates a level of shame in what they had done, clearly. I mean, they couldn't have fully had an 100% clear idea of what they were doing if one of them was 16 and another was 14. I mean, I don't know. I, even at the ages of 14 or 16, knew that having sex with your siblings is wrong. But we also have to remember that this woman is elderly, so maybe she was born during a time period where, unfortunately, some of the boundaries in education around this topic wasn't nearly as robust as it should have been in regards to teaching kids from right to wrong, maybe.
So we were all in a room together, and I looked like everybody. So I'm very, very certain to this day that that was my father. In some ways, it has given me some reassurance, because the fact that they were still talking and still obviously at ease in each other's company would suggest there wasn't an assault. But I never got out and got to...
I mean, I feel like, I don't know, man. I'm just, dude, I'm so weirded out, because it's like, if it wasn't an assault, what prompted them to have sex with each other? That's so fucking, I don't know, man. That's so weird. Like, this has got to be, like, some batshit fucking crazy family or something, right? I feel like that's such a red flag. Like, I almost wonder if, like, the fact that it wasn't an assault is even, I don't know, man. Like, assault's obviously very traumatizing. But I almost wonder in a weird way if it wasn't an assault that it's worse, in the sense that the family's just fucking crazier. Listen, I don't fucking put much thought into incest, truthfully. I don't fucking put much thought into the nuances of incest. Like, it's so like, I can understand from, like, the feeling of this lady that she's telling us, from, like, all the stuff that we're hearing, like, how she feels about it, because it's, like, very taboo. And, like, she is, like, meeting her parents for the first time, and there was, like, kind of, like, a almost warm feeling. I don't know about warm feeling necessarily, but it's more like, it's complicated, right? The way that she feels. So I can understand the nuances with that. I don't exactly feel sorry for the people that engaged with the incest. I don't know, man. It's so weird. It's just, I just don't know what to fucking say. It's bad. It's terrible.
Find out.
Like, I could sit here and be like, oh my god, incest is horrible and all this stuff. Like, we know incest is horrible, but it's just, like, so... I don't think we've had quite a nuanced discussion like we are in this video. It's kind of unexpected.
What had happened, because I started firing off questions. She seemed quite distant, and I found that difficult. I thought she would be much warmer to me, that if she had put her name down, surely she wanted to see me as much as I wanted to see her. I hadn't expected to see my dad as well. So I started firing lots of questions and not really waiting for her to answer, which wasn't particularly fair. And it sort of became just a bit of a rant. And she stopped me eventually and said, look, you're obviously upset, you're obviously distressed. Why don't we rearrange this? You go away and write down all the things you want to ask me, and then we can come back much calmer and I can try and answer your questions. I felt a bit embarrassed really that it had come to that, but I hadn't realised just how angry I felt inside. And so I thought it was a good idea actually, because I wasn't really getting anywhere as I was. So I took the phone number she gave me, and we agreed I would phone her in a couple of weeks' time.
I don't know, man. I feel like, honestly, this could have been, like, one of those families that maybe... Like, I get why she wanted to contact her family, but I also feel like this isn't... Like, the more I watch this, the more I realize maybe you would have been better off not meeting them at all. Like, they seem very strange. If she's still living with the brother and they are almost cordial after the sex and then the incest that spawned from the said sex, I don't know, there's something that's like very off about that. They're like, obviously there was something very weird about this family to begin with.
And that we would rearrange the meeting. So off I went with some very mixed feelings, because I felt like I hadn't got any answers. I felt like that was probably my own fault. I felt that for the first time ever, I fitted somewhere, mainly because of the physical resemblance. So I did what she asked. I went away and I wrote down all my questions about what had happened, why had it happened, why did she not want to keep me, why did they not want to keep me, and why did she just walk away like she did and not even try and find out, until here I was now in my 20s and suddenly she was interested again. So I rang the number to rearrange to go back, and the number was dead. Just didn't connect. This is very old-fashioned, but in those days you went through the operator, and I rang the operator and she said no, that line had been disconnected. So I thought, well, maybe there was something wrong with the phone, I'll go. So
that could just be a sign that maybe the parents really didn't want to see her. They're like, obviously you're angry, but I mean, like, they arranged a meeting, but maybe there's like a world where the mother didn't want to see her at all.
So I went back to the flat and there was nobody there, no answer. I tried knocking on some neighbours' doors to see if anybody knew where they'd gone, or if they'd left any forwarding address or anything.
I don't know. Maybe they just don't want to fucking see her. Maybe they're like very, my theory is that maybe there's like a level of shame after they saw the daughter, as I've communicated before, but like, I guess guilt and shame for what they did. But they still live together, so I don't know. That part just confuses me more than anything. I have so many fucking questions with this. This is like, honestly, like one of the weirdest stories ever. And the reason why it's weird is because there's so many complicated emotions from the woman that's telling the story, but also what the parents of her did was really disgusting inherently, and there's just no defending it. But also at the same time, there's like so many complicated emotions. This is such a weird video to me, because it's like, how do you deal with something like that? I don't think this is something that like me or anyone that's watching this video can relate to. So I just don't, like, maybe I'm just struggling to give appropriate commentary for this. I don't know, man.
No, nobody knew them. It was very much come and go type rental of property, and they didn't know who they were, where they'd come from, or where they'd gone to. That totally crushed me, because it's bad enough to be rejected once, but to be rejected twice.
Yeah. So I think like earlier I was kind of struggling on, is it better to find out or to not find out about what happened to you? And I honestly think that this woman would have been better off living her life not finding out. to be honest. It seems like it's caused her more pain than actually any meaningful success living her life normally. To be honest, I feel like she would have just been like better not knowing about it, because now she has to deal with all this trauma going into it, or she had to deal with it because she's pretty elderly at this point.
Is almost too much to bear. And it poses far more questions, because why did they come back? Why didn't they wait to answer my questions? What was their motivation?
Because they weren't ready to. I don't think they want to face what they did, truthfully. Like, they obviously, like, the rant that you let out in their home obviously got to them to some capacity, and I feel like there's probably, like, some level of guilt that they feel about it. I wouldn't doubt that. And maybe they just weren't ready to deal with it even after all those years, and so they just, like, did everything they can to steer clear from her. I don't know.
For putting their name on the register. And I sort of came to the conclusion that maybe just that they wanted to see that I was okay, that maybe they'd made a good decision in the end, but it felt very unfair. It felt like they had both completely rejected me.
Weird thing to propose, and this is merely a thought experiment, but suppose they did accept you into their life to live normally, like a normal family again. Would that really cure the anger and unresolved feelings you have about the situation? I know that might be, like, weird food for thought, but, like, I think it's a good question to ask yourself, because what would that really change given the situation that she's in? Like, would it change the fact that you're still, unfortunately, a product of incest? I don't think so. And I'm pretty sure even the parents and the siblings know this deep down.
And here I was again with this secret that I still couldn't tell anyone, because now I didn't know what I could even tell. I locked the whole thing away in my brain in little boxes and decided that I would just have to get on with life. It impacted my social life quite a lot, because I was of the age where everybody around me was settling down, getting married, having children. And because most normal men want to do that, they want to start a family, I didn't feel that I could get into any serious relationship, because that would inevitably come up. How could I say I didn't want children when people knew how much I love children? And I couldn't explain why. And so whenever I met somebody and we started to go out, the minute it began to be more serious, I would always just pull away and end the relationship. People didn't know why, I couldn't explain why. And to be honest, after a while, I tried to avoid relationships. It made a very big difference to me in my young adulthood. As I say, I continued to have a great relationship with my nieces and nephews.
I wonder if, like, any doctors could give their opinion on, like, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like I said, there have been people in history, like in ancient Egypt and medieval times. I'm not justifying this, by the way. That have been the products of incest and have been managed to have their own children and live just fine. Now, are the odds that they may get, like, some developmental issues passed on to their offspring? Yes, absolutely. That's why incest is inherently disgusting and gross. But I wonder if maybe this woman, I don't remember her name, I'm sorry. Maybe, did she, like, ever consider maybe, like, visiting a doctor and, like, I guess maybe the doctor could tell them what the odds are that could happen? I don't know, maybe she could get, like, an opinion from them. I don't know, man. Honestly, it's, I feel like that could, but that's a lot to unpack, and she's never meaningfully unpacked it with anyone in her life, so yeah, this situation's very complex. Like, obviously the surface level of it is that it's awful what happened, and, like, the incest itself is disgusting and gross, but the actual story that she's telling is, like, a lot more complex than people may, like, initially grab from it, because it's such a unique story that I don't think a lot of people can relate to, and that's part of the reason why I'm struggling trying to give commentary for this, because I don't like, I'm not the product of incest, and I don't think a lot of you guys are either, so I don't really, maybe my commentary is just not very helpful. I don't know. Like, I'm doing my best here.
Who used to ask, oh, do you not want to get married? Do you not want children? And I would just bat away, well, I haven't met
The story's really sad, though. It's, like, honestly just so fucked up.
Right one yet, or something like that. So threw myself into work. I played a lot of sport until I got injured and just carried on life. I worked very hard in social care and addiction and became a business manager for a very successful residential unit. And that pretty much took up my time, along with family and my nieces and nephews, my siblings. I never thought I would tell anybody. I thought it was something I would carry forever. And I don't really know why I did when I did. I hadn't intended to, but I'd had one of many operations. I have quite a lot of health conditions, some of which are genetic, some of which aren't.
Now, just because she has some, like, health issues that might be genetic based, that doesn't inherently mean that they spawn from the incest. That doesn't necessarily make the incest okay, obviously, but it's possible that even if she lived, like, a different life where she wasn't the product of incest, she would have still gotten those genetic issues regardless. I mean, if it's still from her mother's genes and they have, like, a history of, like, having genetic issues. I mean, you guys get the point, right? Like, we don't know for sure if it spawned from the incest.
But I'd had a big operation on my arm, and so I wasn't able to drive. And a very, very good friend of mine, who was also the director of the addiction clinic we ran, was driving me home from work. We were talking about adoption generally and children, and I have no idea why, but out tumbled my secret. And once I started to talk, I couldn't stop. I got very, very distressed. I just was waiting for a reaction that was going to be everything I thought. And instead of which, he was incredibly supportive and just said, how could you think that people wouldn't like you because of your background? That has nothing to do with you. You are not defined by that. You are who you are. Very capable, very personable, a very well-liked lady. Why?
And that's what makes it so complex, is the fact that, like, she was able to live a life meaningfully despite being a product of incest, which normally a lot of products of incest, the reason, again, like, we all know why incest is bad. I don't need to go into it. But, like, a lot of them tend to have a lot of health issues later in life, and she seemed to have some health issues that could potentially be related to being a product of incest. But, she is where she is now. She obviously lived some meaningful life, some productive life. And that's what makes it so complex, is just the fact that, like, there's all sorts of emotions she felt from that, and it's hard to relate to anybody else because not a lot of people go through something like that.
Have you harboured this for so long? By now I was in my early 40s, so I'd carried this for 20 years. And the relief, at first I didn't believe it. At first I thought he was just saying that, and it's just to make me feel better. And then we carried on talking, and it became clear that that was exactly what he thought, that he didn't see anything reflecting on me from what my parents had chosen to do.
Well, also that probably could have to do with the fact that, like, obviously she wasn't raised by the parents who committed the incest. She was raised in a completely different family with completely different standards, and obviously in my opinion, very clearly more secure family than one that would be as fucked up as committing incest.
In the past, it was nothing to do with me. And why was I letting that dictate my life? And of course, by then, people knew a bit more. There wasn't the scaremongering about incest and handicaps and all those sorts of things. In fact, I probably would have had a child that didn't have anything wrong with them. There was no reason why I shouldn't. I wasn't the person who was committing incest. And
yeah, true.
Even if my parents did, that wouldn't necessarily translate down a generation. So it completely turned everything on its head. And for the first time, I began to feel like a valued person, like I was liked, I was valued. People weren't going to be judging me like I was judging myself.
See, again, that's what I'm talking about. If she never found out, she could have lived a normal life without a lifelong of shame and trauma. You know? That's just, that's why the discussion is very, it's not so black and white.
And that the secret, as horrible as it was for me, was not of any big consideration to them. In many ways, my friend said to me at the time, it's probably made you into the strong and very resilient lady that you are. But that's as much as it should affect you, and you should take the positive from that. And the rest of it is just, that's in your head. So for a long time, I took to get used to that, and that actually everything was okay, and people did like me, did value me, and that the person I thought inside I was is not what people saw from the outside. Before long, I decided that I would go and tell my parents. I was living up in Cambridgeshire by then, they were down in London. I went down to see them and told them that I had something very big that I wanted to share with them. And when I'd finished talking, they were absolutely distraught. Not because they thought there was anything wrong with me or that they judged me in any way, but that I had felt it necessary to keep that as a secret inside me.
I mean, again, there's a massive amount of shame in being the product of incest, and what really adds on to it is the fact that because it's such a taboo and uncommon thing to happen, because of how frowned upon it is, she felt like no one else could relate to her situation because of how fucked up it is. In a weird way, it's similar logic to what sexual assault survivors go through, because it's a constant, oh, what if this was the case? Or, oh, what would other people think about it, you know? Like, it's shameful to admit such a terrible event had occurred in your life.
For so many years, and not come and talk to them. They could have reassured me a long time ago. They adopted me for me. Where I came from or how I came about was not a consideration. They liked me immediately. I slotted in with the family very well, and then became a big sister when my sister arrived. And as far as they were concerned, I was just their lovely daughter Teresa, the same person they'd always thought. And they really were quite upset that I should have had to carry that for so long on my own, and that also that it had impacted my decisions about family and for myself, because they knew what a good auntie I was. They saw that all the time. They saw a lot of their grandchildren, and I often shared some of that time with them because I live quite close by. And they were just really upset that I should feel that I was a lesser person. Because
yeah, I mean, again, that's a very good silver lining, is that they saw her for her, and the past didn't matter, because at that point she was a child and they liked her as the child for their own kid, basically. So, I mean, that's kind of how I would view it. I mean, I don't think I would adopt any child, at least not in this current point in time. I'm not ready to have children at any time soon now. But if I were to have a child, I would prefer it be authentically how any other child is. I don't know if I would go to like an adoption center or anything.
was fit. So slowly I started to tell other people, my siblings obviously first, and then other friends. And again, same reaction. What on earth are you worried about? Why would you think we would think anything differently of you? You're Teresa. That's who we know and like and love. And as time went on, I was talking to somebody who was in the media, who was a journalist, and said to me, have you any idea, if you were to share that story, how many other people you might help? Because although everybody in my life had reacted like that, she said there will be countless other people who have got a similar or the same situation, and who, like you, are scared to tell anyone, who are harbouring a secret that may be affecting their mental health as well. Why don't you tell your story? And so I did. And that...
Yeah, and I think that could actually be like beneficial, because again, even though a lot of people, even though like being a product of incest is not like common nowadays, for the very few that do happen to fall under that category, this kind of story could reassure them that they don't have to carry the shame for the gross act that their parents committed. You know, they can still live their life normally as any other person and be fine. Yeah, I think that, like, in the end, it's kind of a beautiful thing. Not that we should normalize incest at all. That's not what I'm saying. But just that, like, you know, again, it's not so black and white.
Came out
Because you have to think about the trauma that it could inflict on their children as well.
in print in a national newspaper, and the reaction was just incredible. She was exactly right. There were hundreds and hundreds of people who contacted me or messaged me or commented or sent things through the paper because they were in exactly that situation, and like me, thought they were the only one. That, you know, because nobody talks about it, nobody thinks anybody else is in the same situation. I wouldn't wish anybody to make a decision that's so life-changing and wrong and ill-informed, and then, like me, live to regret that decision. And so I've continued to share my story where I can, because I know that it helps other people. From the very first time for me, it was incredibly cathartic, because you actually, now, I'm not keeping it a secret. I'm shouting it from the rooftops. So that makes me happy if it helps other people as well.
That was a really fucked up story, Jesus Christ. But I guess in the end she became okay from it, so God bless her.